So hello everybody and welcome to the webinar. It's great to have you all join us. I'm really excited to have everybody joining this construction and project design webinar today. This is brought to you by Careers with STEM and QUT, and I am joining you today from Lutruwita or Tasmania. I am on the land of the Melakirti people of the Southeast Nation, Australia's first construction specialists, first scientists and first innovators. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and all of the lands from which you are all joining us today. And I acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. So welcome to the Next Gen Careers series. Today's careers are rapidly changing and there's new career areas that are emerging that are in high demand. But you might not have had the chance to study these areas or to find out about them in school. So how can you get prepared for the careers that are in the biggest demand right now? At Careers with STEM, we're running a series of webinars on the most in-demand and exciting career areas to help you prepare for the future. We'll be interviewing real-world STEM professionals live, and we'll give you the lowdown on the paths into next generation careers. We'll then give you the chance to ask your questions about getting into your dream career area. Please feel free to use the Q&A function for the webinar at the bottom of this screen and to introduce yourself on chat. And I'll shortly be joined by some inspiring STEM professionals to answer your questions. But first, to kick us off and get us into the webinar, I'll just share my screen and start with saying thanks to our amazing sponsor, QUT, Queensland University of Technology. So what is Careers with STEM and who am I? My name is Heather Catchpole. I trained as geologist, but I worked most of my life in science communication, and I founded and run the Careers with STEM brand along with my business partner, Karen Taylor Brown. My big passion is walking my dog and enjoying sushi and to help everyone get a career that they love and to find the way to get into the life that they love. So one of the ways we're doing that is through our STEM job kits. We're focusing on STEM job areas that are set to boom, and some of the things you might not be learning about in school, or if you're a career changer, this is a great way to think about getting into a new and emerging career area. We've covered data scientist, future cities shaper, robotics and automation engineer and space defense specialist, to name just a few. And today we're going to deep dive into construction project and design. So why is that? Well, amazingly, 9% of all employment is in construction, and it's a huge growth area. It's projected to grow to 10% by 2023. Construction is just such a big growth area for Australia. The gross domestic product, or GDP, comes in a large part from the construction industry, to a value of about $380 billion a year. And engineering and construction are two of the highest employment areas in STEM. By 2024, it's estimated that construction will employ 1.28 million people in Australia. So it's growing really fast. So what can you do if you work in construction? Construction and project designers can work on projects big and small, in residential or city buildings like the White Pavilion Museum in Dubai, shown here, or in infrastructure like roads, rail and leisure areas. You can work in technical roles, looking at the way information is presented and shared across different disciplines, or you can spend your time utilizing design thinking techniques, that's putting yourself in the user's place, to understand how to better create and update the way that we design and build. It's a really diverse career sector. There's a wide range of areas to work in and a huge demand for talent. You'll focus on teamwork and communication skills, and also specifics such as mechanical and electrical systems, cost estimation and scheduling. Not to mention using 3D building visualization tools to help understand how everything fits together. There are many pathways into construction careers. You can study civil engineering, architecture, construction, urban design, or combine these study areas together and combine them with other interests that you might have, like business. If you're looking to move into this career areas, make sure that you choose electives in high school like design technologies, industrial technologies, digital technologies, and art, and also keep doing your maths into year 11 and 12. Here are a few of the study degree options at QUT. A Bachelor of Urban Development and Construction Management, Urban and Regional Planning, or Quantity Surveying and Cost Engineering. You could also do a Bachelor of Engineering in Civil Engineering, or a Bachelor of Design in Architecture, combined with a Bachelor of Urban Development and Construction Management. So where could you end up, and what kind of careers could this lead to? You could be looking at a career as a graduate construction manager, a site manager, or a project manager, earning up to $194,000 after a few years on the clock, or $155,000 as a graduate project manager in construction. Or you could move into architecture and earn an average salary of around $85,000. One of the great benefits of working in construction is being able to see your work. The things that you work on become part of the urban landscape, and there's a huge reward in being able to see what you've completed in real life. Construction and project designers can also work to improve sustainability in the building industry, both in the design of buildings and the way that they are made. For example, offsite and prefabrication construction can save money and energy, as building in bulk can improve the way that we use tools and materials, and also improve the accuracy of the build. Whether you're working in construction on projects that are on the large scale or on the small scale, you're making a difference to people's lives, to our environment, and to the way that we live. So what are the kind of tasks that you might do in construction project design? Your weekly tasks with working in construction project design can be so varied. You need to be on top of scheduling, making sure that the project stays on track, and that different contractors and materials are available when needed. You might be doing site surveys or preparing project briefs with the information, design, and specification of the job. You'll need to be a good coordinator, working with planning bodies and undertaking reviews and site inspections. You might also work on the design of the form and content of the project, working with the clients to seek approvals and confirm budgets. So to find out more about what a day in the life of construction and project design, we're going to start by looking at the design of the building. Georgia Part is a registered architect and project leader at Cotty Parker Architects, working within the seniors living and multi-residential sectors. Having lost both her paternal grandparents to Alzheimer's, Georgia's work within seniors living is both a personal and professional passion. Georgia applies creative and human-centric design principles to architectural design and problem solving. With an interest in co-design and sustainability, she has cultivated an architectural approach that responds to and enriches the built environment. Georgia has a broad design portfolio, having worked in seniors living, health, commercial, residential, and multi-residential projects with a wide range of scales and budgets. Being involved from initial brief development to construction documentation, Georgia understands the importance of detail, even at the early stages of design, in achieving a memorable and successful design outcome. And I'd like to invite Georgia to join us now. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, hello everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
No problem, great to be here.
So when did you first realize that you were interested in architecture?
I had a bit of an epiphany when I think I was 10 years old. And I just would go out on the weekends and visit display homes with my dad. I did art classes with my mum, and I just always had this real passion for the world around me. And as I went through life, I just think that architecture ended up being the perfect fit of creativity, problem solving, that really activated both parts of my brain, and who can't just fall in love with buildings.
So take us back to sort of high school, college, and then into uni. What are the kind of subjects that you chose, and what did you have to then enroll into and study to become an architect?
Yeah, definitely. So the process of becoming an architect is quite a long process. And having decided I wanted to be an architect when I was 10, I was very focused going through high school as the sort of subjects that I think I thought I needed to do. So when I went through high school, I did your Maths B, your Maths C, physics and graphics, as well as English and English literature. But what I find amazing about architecture is there's no one size fits all for the type of architect you want to be. So whatever your interest is, there's probably a way that that can be utilized as an architect. So I always thought that I would need to be amazing at maths and physics because, you know, those sorts of things make a building get built. But I actually wish I'd done things like art or even maybe drama or something like that while I was at school, because those sorts of creative expressions and being able to communicate, those are the sort of skills I had to develop throughout university. but would have been really, really useful to develop early on. And it means you can also have a bit more fun while you're at high school as well. But I did do all of those, high intensity maths and physics subjects. Graphics was my absolute favorite. And I think if you love graphics, you'll probably love architecture. But moving forward from that, I did a Bachelor of Design and Architectural Studies at QUT. And so after finishing the bachelor's degree, I then went on to do the master's degree. And once you have both of those two degrees together, you then have to go through the accreditation process. So if you want to be a building designer, you can just do a bachelor's degree. But if you want to call yourself a architect with a capital A, you have to go through to do your master's. Then there's a logbook, which shows 3,300 hours of work experience across lots of different categories. Then you have to sit an exam. Then there's an interview process. And after all of this, showing that you have a breadth of experience and a lot of understanding within the industry, then you can call yourself an architect. And it's something you have to maintain every year through continued professional development. So it's a very intense process, but it is incredibly rewarding at the end.
I love that. Thank you so much for breaking that down, and so we can see that pathway. But I really love that what you said about combining those skills from art and drama along with your math, keeping up your maths and finding that pathway into something that you love. And you've really been able to make a difference in people's lives, as well as people's building, specializing in senior and aged care. Tell me, how did you sort of get into that, and what's been your favorite project?
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started out working, you kind of take whatever jobs you can get. I was working at companies that did a lot of apartment blocks and things like that. And it was great work, but it always felt a little bit like I was selling my soul to just make developers more money. And then I got a job working at Cotty Parker Architects, and they were just starting up a seniors living team. So I've been on the ground floor of trying to start up that portfolio within the company. And I get to work on projects like the one that's behind me, which is a aged care facility we just completed at the Gold Coast for Japara and Robina. And in your introduction, you said that I lost both of my paternal grandparents to Alzheimer's, and seeing their journey going from being independent into living in aged care, it was quite heartbreaking to see the condition that some people would be living in the last years of their life. So for me to be able to go and help design spaces that can improve the quality of life, prolong life, and just actually celebrate people who've lived such difficult and long lives before. There's been so much talk at the moment with the Royal Commission, and then COVID's just decimated a lot of the reputation in the industry. So to be part of an industry that's now completely reinventing itself and responding to those disruptors really means that I feel like I'm using my powers for good and designing great quality spaces that will improve people's quality of life.
That's so interesting. And there's so much that goes into that design, isn't it? I mean, you can think about sort of lighting, you can think about spaces, you can think about, Internet of Things and smart kind of care as well. So it's such an exciting and interesting area to go in. It's something that we all need to think about into the future as well with our aging population. So what a cool area to work in. If someone's kind of interested in going into aged care and thinking, what might I be able to do? What can I specialize in? What are the kind of first steps that I should take? What would be your advice to students interested in a career in architecture?
I would say, if you're in that high school space at the moment, definitely getting involved in doing things like graphics. I think there's a building technology is sometimes a subject that you can do at school. Getting that sort of ground-based experience is fantastic. You can also try and get work experience at certain firms. I know as part of my office, we sometimes let in some year 10 or 11 students to do work experience in our office. So we'll just sit them at a desk for a week and we give them fake projects to work on, so you can get an idea of what it's like to be on the tools and the sort of things that we have to think about maybe in designing your own dream home. But there's lots of different pathways into getting into architecture. The most straightforward one is, going through the bachelor's degree and the master's degree. But there's other things like going into building design at TAFE, or if you're more interested in project management or construction management, there's those pathways as well. But I always find that, go to open homes and, hang around on the weekend just looking at buildings. Brisbane Open House is also a fantastic resource, which happens in October every year, where you can go behind the scenes and check out lots of buildings you wouldn't normally be able to go into. And that can help start fuel that fire and knowledge And then once travel opens up, go and see the world as well.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's some amazing architecture out there to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And what a cool work experience opportunity. I would love to sit there for a week
Yes.
and design my dream home. That sounds fantastic. What do you think will be the future of architecture? Where do you think that the exciting developments are happening next?
I think what's really exciting in the industry is the moving away from everything being budget and cost driven. Actually putting people first is starting to become a marketable idea. So the problem I think in the industry a lot of the time is the people who hold the purse strings just want to keep making more and more money. So they might cut corners, or they don't really care how a building operates over its overall lifestyle. So there's a great push now for sustainability in building materials, user-centered design, and being in seniors living, the idea of aging in place. So being able to have a home that you can live in, for your entire life. You can raise your family there, you can retire there, and you can die there. So I think it's a really fantastic that the industry is starting to realize that you can make money out of making people happy. So the design is now taking a much stronger focus at the initial stages of architecture, which we were a bit lost there, I think, for a couple of decades, and just trying to make money out of buildings rather than actually making positive built environments.
Yeah, fantastic. And there are some really exciting sustainable building, happening around us. I think it's a great area for kids to look into. And yourself personally, Georgia, what's next for you? What's exciting development, or what's your kind of dream, project that you'd love to work on?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I'm in progression of my firm to head up the seniors living division. So my boss, he will be retiring in about 5 years. So I've only actually been an architect, like a trained architect, for about 5 years. So in another 5 years' time, I'll actually be heading up an entire portfolio sector and being the lead on seniors living. So that's really exciting for me. So the more projects I can work on, pretty much that's just going to be my life, is to try and keep making a positive contribution to aged care and seniors living, and how that whole field develops over the rest of my life until I personally have to go live in one.
You'll design your own perfect retirement. And that's it. Your boss has been told now, right? 5 years. It's on the record.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And 5 years into your job, what an awesome career. Thanks so much, Georgia. Georgia's going to join us a little bit later for some Q&A. So thanks for that. And we'll see you in a little couple of minutes in the panel.
See you then.
So moving on to project management. We're looking at that kind of middle stage. Once you actually got the designs and you're on the ground, what does that look like? So urban designer and project manager Holly Layton has transformed a historic military site into luxury townhouses and degraded farmland into a thriving wetland. Holly studied a Bachelor of Built Environment, Urban and Regional Planning, a graduate diploma in urban design, and a Master of Project Management at QUT, and she's now a development manager at AV Jennings. One of her career highlights was working on the Garrison 14 project to convert a heritage-listed military site into 10 luxury townhouses. Holly worked with Defence, the local council, and community groups to make sure that the development reflected the site's history. In her current role at AV Jennings, Holly is managing the Creekwood project on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. This project is giving degraded rural farmland a new lease of life as a master planned community with housing lots, wildlife corridors, and a wetlands. I'd like to invite Holly to join me now.
Thanks for having me.
What a cool project. I love the sound of that. Let's kind of go back first to your, starting to get into your career. Why did you get into a career in construction in the first place?
My family has a construction business for the last 40 years. So my dad was a builder, started off in Tassie and moved to the Sunshine Coast. So I've kind of grown up in a construction business. On my school holidays, I had to go and clean my dad's job sites with my two sisters. So I kind of got the flavour then of what construction's all about, and got to see things from start to finish, I suppose, at a young age. So I can remember my dad walking around a job site with old school mobile phones, and I was like, oh, I want to be like my dad, and I don't think that ever left me until I finished school and then went to QUT. So that's where the love of construction came from.
Fantastic. And I guess, people kind of think construction site, hard hats, whole bunch of blokes and tradies and things like that. When we look at you, we can see a whole different side of construction. It looks like, you know, a very stylish office place to work. What are the kind of myths about construction and working in construction that you'd really like to bust?
Yeah, it's my role as a development manager at AV Jennings is quite diverse, and I don't think that that's just an isolated case at AV Jennings. I think that's across the board in development management, that you know, we have to have an office-based role as well as a site-based role. So, you know, I have to do cash forecasts, reconcile costs at the end of the month, advise the business what I'm going to make in terms of settlements for financial year. I also have to go out on site on sometimes when a project's active on a weekly basis to have meetings with the civil team. We have internal meetings as well. Sometimes I end up at council with our COO discussing infrastructure agreements as well. So it's quite diverse. It's not just office-based, but site-based as well. And our team that contributes to the project internally at AV Jennings involves our accounts department, even our general manager, sales, marketing. So it's, you know, our construction team as well. It's quite diverse. So it's not just all blokes out on site doing a thing. It's very different from that. Yeah.
Fantastic. It sounds like a really varied and interesting job. How did you kind of prepare for that in your study pathway? Did you sort of have a chance to get that kind of experience, and how did your study kind of prepare you for your work? What are the sort of skills that were really important that you learned in your study?
I think at high school, in year 12, I struggled a bit in terms of, I knew that I wanted to get into construction, but I was quite scared, I suppose, to go and speak to my careers counsellor. And I didn't have the type of support I think that school kids do now. So I think it's really important from a support perspective that if someone's struggling a little bit, to go and see a careers counsellor, to take a friend with them, so they understand what their options are after school as well. That's super important. After I finished school, I really hit my strides when I went to QUT, and it was something that I was like really interested in, which is a Bachelor of Built Environment in Town Planning and Landscape Architecture. And I felt like I thrived when I hit uni. And then after that, I kind of, once you hit your career as well, you can sort of diverse and go in slightly different career paths. So I then went and studied urban design and worked as an urban designer, and then as a project manager, and then now development manager. So doing a master's at QUT in project management kind of helped me get some, I suppose, commercial acumen to help support my role. So that was really worthwhile.
You've worked on such interesting projects, you know, one with military heritage, another where you're, you know, developing wildlife corridors and really, you know, an eye to like having that kind of multi-use. What are the kind of skills that you need to manage such complex projects like this?
I think from a technical perspective, you'll learn that in the first maybe, you know, the 5 to 10 years of your career. And even listening to our CEO today on a mentoring program discussion, he was saying that after you learn the technical aspects early in your career, it's really for you to elevate into the next level of your career is to have really good personal skills, empathy, and understanding as well. So for school leavers in the early sense, getting as much experience as you can. And, you know, from school, I mean, I did graphics, I did sports and recreation, I did really diverse things, and English as well. And I didn't really study too much in maths, but when I went to uni, there were in the first year that there was physics and maths in my built environment subject. So it is really quite diverse, but also the skills the personal skills that you develop as you're going into your adulthood really will carve your way as a leader in the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really great advice. I also loved your advice about taking a friend with you to see a careers advisor.
Yep.
You've obviously had a chance to have some pretty cool, work experience with your family. What advice would you have for students who might be interested in a career in construction and just starting out?
Yeah, my family gave me that early edge, I suppose. But once I moved down to Brisbane, I did work experience for Place Design Group, and there weren't a lot of jobs when I left, and so I worked for free 3 days a week at that point in time, and then I ended up getting a job, worked with Place Design Group, and then went on from there. So I think it's like trying to get work experience, and things are very different now. But in some companies, as Georgie said before, they do internships. AV Jennings does as well. I think it's like a 6 or 8 week period as well. So we just employed a young man who's a project admin who's finishing off his property economics degree as well, and he's working at AV Jennings. So I just think maybe trying to get work experience and sending your resume out to different companies to see what you can land, and seem really keen and hungry to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be backwards in coming forwards.
Yeah, that's right.
So same questions to Georgia, like where do you see the future of construction and where do you see yourself in say 5 to 10 years?
The future of construction, I think in the short term, because of COVID, like all of our material costs have really escalated at the moment. So, and a lot of trades are booked out well in advance. So I think because of COVID and then the stimulus packages that the federal government have had, it's kept everyone busy in the development industry. And I think as international borders open as well, it's going to keep getting busier. And I know Phil Anderson, an Australian economist, is saying up until 2026, it's going to be on an incline. So it's a good time to get into construction, I think, and get some great experience. Where I see myself in 5 years' time is a pretty tricky question for me, but I know the things that I'm working on in the short term is the project that on the Sunshine Coast, Creekwood. We are partnering with QUT and doing the research on the wetland there. And I think it's super important to show people that you can leave projects in a better state than what you found them. And in that particular instance, it was a degraded rural farmland with really no vegetation on it at all. We've created a master plan community with a thriving wetland now that pumps fresh water out into the bay. And I think that partnering with QUT to create a blueprint on that is something that I definitely want to do in the short term, and publish that so other people can use it and see that we can leave the environment in a better state. So that's what I'm working on in the short term.
Wow, that is so inspiring. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Holly, for joining us. I'm feeling the pain of that cost of materials myself, so I totally agree with you there. So finally, how do you go about getting into construction and project design, and what's it like to study it? To tell us a little bit more about that and also her own fascinating career path, we're joined by Sarah Omrani. Sarah started her own path into construction and project design, studying a Bachelor of Architectural Engineering in Iran, focusing on sustainable design. She worked as an architect, and when she finished her bachelor degree, she also worked as an energy efficiency engineer after doing a PhD. Then she did postdoctoral research on construction management, and she's now a lecturer in virtual design and construction at QUT. Sarah has been involved in a range of projects, including natural ventilation and thermal comfort in high-rise buildings, urban heat island effect, building information modelling, and intergenerational learning and living. Last year, she started a project looking at the impact of ventilation design in buildings on cross-contamination, with a particular focus on COVID-19. Couldn't be more relevant to today's times. In addition to conducting research, Sarah is involved in teaching undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in her role as a lecturer. And I'd like to invite Sarah to join us now. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. I'm just fascinated by this research into COVID. Just start with looking at that. What do we need to think about in order to design better and smarter buildings in the future and to design safely for COVID?
Yeah. So I think one of the aspects that we are looking into now is more occupants. So traditionally, I guess Georgia touched on that as well. Traditionally, it was all about cost and time, but now we are starting to focus on the occupants more. And so it is important to know the state of building and the way that is being used to be able to design the building in a way that provides the best indoor environment for its occupants.
Fantastic. And how did you go about your own start? Like, why were you inspired to study and work in this area? You've done so many different things. It's really fascinating. What inspired you in the first place, and how difficult was it for you to get a start in the field?
I guess for me, my father, it has a little bit to do with my father occupation. He is a structural engineer, and from the early ages, when we went out, he used to talk about like different buildings that we passed by, a little bit of history and how he has worked on different buildings. And it was always fascinating to me to see that you can work on something that comes to life actually. And it can even outlive you. So to have sort of a legacy and to work on something so tangible, it was always really fascinating to me. And I also used to go to construction sites with him, normally over the weekends when there weren't many things going around. But that's how I came to contact with this area, basically. And for how difficult it was to get into, well, as you mentioned, I did my bachelor's in Iran, so the entry requirements were quite different to here. It was a little bit difficult to get to university, and it was also a little bit difficult at the beginning to wrap my head around everything that is required to study in this area. But it was really enjoyable and rewarding afterwards when you started to learn about different things and different aspects and basically match everything that you learn. It was very enjoyable.
Fantastic. I'm going to take one of the questions from the audience now that's come in. What advice do you have for students who want to learn more about the industry but don't know where to start?
Perhaps Georgia and Holly would be better to answer that, but I guess there are like different activities within the industry and different placement opportunities that students can take on and gain a bit of experience in there. I'm pretty sure that many companies advertise their needs and you can really get in touch with them to see what are the requirements and whether you're a good fit for them.
Fantastic. And in terms of the actual course paths, what are the different kind of course paths that are available for students going into construction and project design?
So obviously we've got Bachelor of Architecture that students can enroll in at QUT, and they can double it with many different degrees, like with urban development. In urban development, we have 3 different majors. We've got urban and regional planning, quantity surveying and cost engineering and construction management. And also we've got a master degree of Master of Project Management. So there are all these pathways and there are opportunities for double degrees. Yeah.
Fantastic. And if you're in year 10, 11 and 12, what would you say are there prerequisites? Are there certain things that you need to study to get into these courses?
You may not work with mathematics every day, but I think it would be really good to still know a little bit about it and statistics as well. Perhaps for quantity surveys, it's more applicable to work with data and numbers more than other disciplines, but still it helps to be able to analyze different data, historical data, predict how to work in the future buildings. Also, things to do with spatial design and graphic design, they can be really helpful, especially if you are more into the design spectrum of things. Communication, so it's not just about technical skills, it is also about soft skills. So it is really important to be a good team player, basically, because teamwork is a really integral part of this industry. So you work with different parts and with different specialization, and it's really important to be able to work with different people. And also communication is really important, whether it is verbal or written. You got to be able to communicate with people with different specialties and to basically come to a common language to be able to work with them.
Yeah, fantastic. That's such great advice about those skills. And finally, I mean, we talked in the job kit that this webinar is based on. We talked about so many great things in the forward about the future of construction and project design, about virtual sort of 3D visualization, about building information systems and data, and where's it going. Where for you is the most exciting area of the future, do you think, for construction and project design?
I think sustainability is a very interesting aspect for me. I've been working in this area for a while, and it really fascinates me, and I think it is something that people are paying much more attention to nowadays. We definitely are going to use more and more of technological advances to focus more on both occupants and also sustainability aspects. So we look into using more of sustainable materials and also reusing, recycling, rebuilding. So there are all these aspects that are gaining more and more attentions. And also the way that historically construction industry works is been really fragmented and not very, very efficient. But now, again, with the technological advances, we see more collaboration for better outcomes.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's, that kind of collaboration can be, digital as well as kind of communications. So there's a lot of different skills that be involved in that. I'd now like to invite Georgia and Holly to join us again for some panel sessions, and we'll get to the rest of your questions. We have a question here. What advice do you have about portfolios? Perhaps, Georgia, would this sort of fall into your area of expertise? What would your advice be about portfolios?
Yeah, definitely. I had a mentor recently who is a mentee, sorry, he's a second year architecture student. She was asking me this because obviously you go through university with the intent of getting a job. And one of the best ways within our industry is through a portfolio. And I think the best advice is to just show diversity of skill sets. So it's very tempting to put lots of really beautiful, striking renders within your portfolio. But when you first start out working in the industry, you'll be doing very little design work. There's a common joke that when you start going to work experience in architecture office, you're in charge of the toilet partitions. So when I first got my first job, my job was to copy and paste sinks every 15 meters down a hospital corridor. And that was my job for the first couple of weeks on the job. So
got to make sure those sinks are in the right place.
Exactly. It's very important, very important.
It's a big responsibility.
So when an employer is looking at a portfolio, they want to see that you maybe have technical understanding about documentation standards or familiar with codes like Australian standards and the National Construction Code. So when you go through a university degree, you'll have subjects that will teach you all of that technical background as well as the design skills that you'll need. So if you're doing the same thing, say you're at school and you're looking to put together a portfolio, showing snapshots of writing or of problem solving that you've done, as well as your artistic skills, because to be a successful, or architect anyway, to have the breadth of experience and skill sets across communication and technology is always a great asset.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I guess that's something that you normally wouldn't think about, is showing that kind of experience in writing and project management and things like that as well in a portfolio. That's fantastic. And Holly, perhaps we'll get you to unmute and pop your video on and answer this question that's come in. What makes students stand out to recruiters and employers? Is it grades, experience, extracurricular experience, or all of the above?
I think judging from our latest recruiter, project admin at AV Jennings, it was definitely his willingness to learn and his attitude. So I think people can develop skills very quickly, and if you're at university or have done some work experience, I think that you'll pick things up quite quickly if you're mentored by more senior people. But it's definitely having the right attitude and not saying no to doing things. I think it's being yes when you're starting off early in your career, just to do everything that you can to absorb the information from people that are more senior than you. So you can, if you want to climb the ranks, I suppose that's the way that you're going to do it, by showing that you can work as part of a team.
Yeah, fantastic. And Georgia, would you agree? Is that there are other sort of recommendations to stand out in terms of architecture and getting hired?
Yeah, I would say to not get fixated on trying to be the perfect version of what they think that you need to be. Find out what you yourself are passionate about or what you're interested in, and leverage off of that. So throughout my career, I had a gap between doing my bachelor's and my master's, where there were just no jobs in architecture whatsoever. I couldn't get a job. So I went and did an internship over in Germany, where I helped run a facade conference. I worked at QUT in marketing and helped run high school engagement workshops. And those sorts of skills have then allowed me to be an asset in my office in doing fee proposals and product pitches for new jobs through my marketing experience, as well as helping my office run events and things like that. So rather than me just trying to fixate on just doing things that were straight architecture, I was able to bring skills from outside of the industry into my office to help give me that little bit of extra edge.
Yeah, I love that cross-disciplinary skills. That's fantastic. And Sarah, you've worked in industry and academia and really diverse projects. How easy is it to move across different projects and move careers and shift whole career areas in construction and project design?
I think when you're working in this industry, there are many different pathways that people can take. Depending on what your passion is, you really can specialize in very specific skills. Shifting, I don't know how easy that would be, but I know that when you've got some academic experience, you can apply it in the industry. And in academia, we also look for people who have lots of industry experience to work with us. So you can shift. I wouldn't say it is super easy, but there are like lots of opportunities that you can work on different projects with different specialties, and it is really diverse and can be done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all of our panel. It's been so fascinating deep diving into this area, and I'm sure there's many more questions that we'd love to get to. But to continue with where you can find some more information, this webinar was based on the construction and project design job kit. You can get some more information there about how to get started in this career, about the sector deep dive, so understanding some of the different areas that you can work, as well as day in the life profiles. You can find out more about Holly's work, salary information, and job growth stats. If you do want to find out more about course pathways, qut.edu/think-STEM. And if you're looking for more inspiration about STEM careers, I loved hearing how maths was so applicable to this area of construction and project design. Careers with STEM has a variety of magazines that come out once every term on technology, engineering, science, and maths and data, as well as deep dives into growing career areas such as space. Look out for all of that information on careerswithstem.com. If you're watching on YouTube today, don't forget to subscribe and check out some more STEM careers on the in-demand playlist. And thank you again to all of my panel, Holly, Georgia, and Sarah, for joining me today.